My daughter screamed and swore outside my door, pounding on it with her fists after I changed the locks on the house. And when my son-in-law showed up with a crowbar and started breaking in, forcing the door open with fierce force, what he saw inside made him regret everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The humidity slapped me before I'd finished my cool-down stretch. 6 miles through the Katy neighborhoods, and my shirt clung to my back like a second skin. 67 years old, and I could still outpace men half my age. The morning run kept me sharp, kept the firefighter discipline alive, even though I'd retired 5 years back. I pushed open the front door and stopped. Bass thudded through the walls. The living room looked like a hurricane had torn through it. Empty bottles lined the coffee table. Pizza boxes sagged on the floor. Someone's jacket draped over my reading chair. A stranger sprawled across the couch, mouth open, one arm hanging toward the carpet. Another body curled in the recliner, shoes still on. My house. My home for 23 years. I walked past the wreckage, sweat cooling on my skin, and headed toward the bedroom. The hallway stretched ahead, and something looked wrong. The master bedroom door stood wide open. It was never open anymore. Then I saw them. Garbage bags. 4 black trash bags lined against the hallway wall, like they were waiting for pickup day. I knew what was inside before I looked. My clothes bulged through the plastic, my shoes, my books. Everything I'd kept in that bedroom for 2 decades, stuffed into trash bags like I was being evicted from my own life. I stopped at the threshold, didn't cross it, just stood there and looked. Beulah's makeup covered the dresser where my wallet used to sit. Shane's work boots sat beside the bed, my bed, the one Lorraine and I picked out together back in 2003. Their clothes filled the closet. The framed photo of Lorraine that always sat on my nightstand was gone. In its place, an ashtray overflowed with cigarette butts. "Dad, you're back." Beulah appeared in the doorway behind me, wearing one of Shane's oversized shirts, hair tangled. She didn't look surprised, didn't look guilty. She looked like she'd been expecting this conversation and already had her answers prepared. "Beulah, Shane, we need to talk about what happened here last night. This is... Old man, you live here because we let you." Shane's voice cut through mine like a blade. He stepped up beside Beulah, bare-chested, his mechanic's muscles flexing as he crossed his arms. "This house will be ours soon anyway, so get used to your new room. Your glory days are over." The words hung in the air, not a threat, a declaration. "Dad, you should be grateful we're even here taking care of you." Beulah's voice carried that syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. "At your age, you need us more than we need you." 3 years. 3 years since I'd opened my door, and my heart told them they could stay until they got back on their feet. 3 years of watching my home become theirs. My rules become suggestions. My life becomes smaller and smaller until it fit into a storage room at the back of the house. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, searched for the girl who used to sit on my shoulders at the 4th of July parade, who'd cried when I taught her to ride a bike, who'd hugged me so tight at her high school graduation, I thought my ribs would crack. She wasn't there anymore. I see. 2 words, that's all I gave them. But in those 2 words, something crystallized. The fog I'd been walking through for 3 years cleared. I'd been waiting for them to remember who I was, what I'd done for them, how a father deserves respect. I'd been waiting for gratitude, for change, for the daughter I raised to come back. I was done waiting. "That's right. Stay quiet." Shane's grin showed teeth. "It's better for everyone when you remember your place." I bent down, picked up one of the trash bags. My clothes shifted inside the plastic, heavy and tangled. I straightened, felt the weight in my hands, and walked past them. Down the hall, past the bathroom, to the small storage room beside the laundry area, the 8x10 space with 1 window, a cot, and a single dresser they had decided was good enough for me. I set the bag down, closed the door behind me. My hands didn't shake. My breathing stayed even. 32 years fighting fires had taught me how to stay calm when everything around you burned. You assess, you plan, you act. A photograph hung on the wall above the cot. Me in my firefighter uniform, 20 years younger, standing in front of Station 28. The Houston Fire Department patch visible on my shoulder, Captain Lonnie Patterson. The man who'd pulled 4 people from a burning apartment complex on Westheimer. The man who'd trained 24 rookies. the man who'd never backed down from a challenge. I sat on the edge of the cot and stared at that younger version of myself. The house had gone quiet. The stranger on the couch probably still slept. Beulah and Shane probably went back to bed, satisfied they'd put me in my place, confident the old man had finally accepted his role. They were wrong. I sat there as the morning light crept through the small window, as the Texas heat began building for another scorching day, as the sounds of my occupied house filtered through the thin walls. I sat there and I planned. The next morning, I left the house before they woke up. My alarm buzzed at 5:30. I dressed in the dark, khaki slacks, a button-down shirt I'd ironed the night before, my good leather belt, not my usual shorts and t-shirt. This required a different uniform. The storage room door opened without a sound. I'd learned which boards creaked, which paths stayed silent. Through the dim hallway, past their closed bedroom door, out to the driveway where my truck sat, bathed in pre-dawn gray. The engine turned over quiet. I backed out, shifted into drive, and headed toward the freeway before the sun broke the horizon. Houston traffic built early. By the time I merged onto I-10, the eastbound lanes had already started their daily crawl toward downtown. I kept the radio off. Needed to think. Needed to stay focused on what came next. I'd spent the previous night on my phone, searching. Tenant eviction, Houston, Texas. Removing family members from home. Property rights, Harris County. The blue light from the screen had illuminated the storage room until past midnight. I'd taken notes on the back of an old envelope, crossed out dead ends, circled possibilities. One name kept appearing in the reviews. Alma Crawford, family law attorney. Fair prices, straight talk. Office on Travis Street downtown. I'd called at 7 that morning. The receptionist said Ms. Crawford had a cancellation at 9 if I could make it. I could make it. The parking garage on Travis smelled like oil and exhaust. I took the elevator to the 7th floor, found suite 712, pushed through the glass door into a waiting room with burgundy chairs and magazines nobody read. Mr. Patterson? A woman in her early 50s emerged from a back office. Gray blazer, sharp eyes, handshake like she meant it. I'm Alma Crawford. Come on back. Her office had windows overlooking the street, a desk organized like a military operation, diplomas from Texas Southern University on the wall. She gestured to a chair across from her and sat down with a legal pad. Tell me what's happening. I laid it out. 3 years ago, financial trouble, temporary arrangement, my daughter and her husband. No lease, no formal agreement, just a father helping family. Now they'd taken over, thrown parties, damaged property, moved me out of my own bedroom, refused to leave when I asked. Alma took notes, didn't interrupt. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. Mr. Patterson, I understand this is your daughter, but legally she and her husband are tenants now. You'll need to file formal eviction papers through the Justice Court. It's not pleasant, but it's the only legal way. And after the eviction is processed, I leaned forward. If they refuse to leave or try to force their way back in, something shifted in her expression. Recognition, maybe? Like she'd heard this question before and knew what it really meant. Then they've crossed into criminal territory, breaking and entering, criminal trespass, potentially assault if they threaten you. At that point, it's a police matter, not civil court. Texas takes property rights seriously. The words settled into place like puzzle pieces. Civil eviction first, criminal consequences after. 2 separate systems, 2 separate paths, one leading to the other. How long does the eviction process take, step by step? She walked me through it. 30-day notice delivered by sheriff. Court hearing if they contest. Writ of possession if they still won't leave. 6 weeks minimum from start to finish, sometimes 8 depending on court schedules and their cooperation. I know that seems long, but the law requires it. She slid a packet of forms across the desk. Fill these out. File them at the Justice Court on Westland. They'll schedule the sheriff to deliver notice. After that, the clock starts. I took the papers, asked about costs, filing fees, court costs, sheriff service, wrote down numbers, asked what happened if they destroyed property during the eviction period, asked what evidence I should gather, asked questions a firefighter asks when sizing up a situation. What are the variables? What can go wrong? What's my backup plan? Alma answered everything. When I stood to leave an hour later, I had a folder full of forms and a clear picture of the battlefield. "Mr. Patterson?" She walked me to the door. "Document everything. Take photos. Keep records. If this goes bad, you'll need evidence." "I will." I shook her hand again and walked back through the waiting room, down the elevator, into the concrete cave of the parking garage. Sat in my truck with the folder on my lap. The eviction papers stared up at me, blank spaces waiting for dates, addresses, names. My daughter's name. I started the engine and drove. The hardware store sat on the way home. I pulled into the lot, went inside, found what I needed in aisle 7. A small fireproof safe with a combination lock. Gray metal, heavy enough to matter, light enough to move. $59 plus tax. Back in the truck, I set it on the passenger seat and continued west on I-10, back toward Katie, back toward the house that didn't feel like mine anymore, but still had my name on the deed. The afternoon sun hammered down as I pulled into the driveway. Shane's truck sat in its usual spot, covered in dried mud from whatever job site he'd been working. Music drifted through the walls, their music, their volume, their world. I grabbed the safe, tucked it under my arm, and walked to the front door. Inside, someone laughed. Glass clinked. The television blared a game show. I turned the knob and went inside. Through the still messy living room, down the hallway, into the storage room. Closed the door, set the safe on the floor beside the dresser. Inside it, I placed the deed to my house, my birth certificate, Lorraine's death certificate, my firefighter pension documents, the eviction papers Alma had given me, everything that mattered, everything that proved who I was and what I owned. I spun the combination lock, tested it, secure. Through the thin walls, Shane's voice rose in another laugh. Beulah said something I couldn't make out. Their life continued, oblivious. But the clock had started ticking. They just didn't know it yet. I sat on the cot and allowed myself one small smile. The days crawled past. I left before sunrise, came home after dark, ate breakfast at a diner on Highway 6, grabbed dinner from whatever drive-thru stayed open late. The storage room became a cell I occupied between my shifts of avoiding them. 10 days after I'd secured my documents in the safe, I was sitting on the cot when I heard the knock. Not their knock, not the sound of someone coming home or a delivery driver tossing a package at the door. This was official, 3 solid raps that carried authority. I stayed where I was, listened. Shane's footsteps crossed the living room. The door opened. Harris County Sheriff's Office. The voice came through the walls, formal and clear. "I have legal documents for Shane Hughes and Beulah Patterson Hughes. This is official notice of eviction proceedings." Silence. Then paper rustling. The door closed. More silence. I could picture Shane standing there, staring at the papers, trying to process what he was reading. Then the explosion. "Lonnie!" Shane's voice shook the house. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. My door slammed open. "You filed eviction papers? On your own family? You're throwing us out on the street?" He filled the doorway. The sheriff's notice crumpled in his fist. Beulah appeared behind him, eyes wide, scanning the papers over his shoulder. I stood up slowly, positioned myself with my back near the wall, giving myself space. Kept my hands loose at my sides. "This is real?" Beulah's voice climbed high. "Dad, you're evicting us? Your own daughter?" "This is my house." My voice came out level, no tremor, no doubt. "I gave you 3 years. You took advantage. You have 30 days to find an apartment." Shane took a step into the room. 30 days? We're not going anywhere. This is our home now." "It's my house," I repeated. "The deed has my name, just mine." He shoved the small table beside the door. It scraped across the floor, hit the wall. The sound was meant to intimidate, to show what he could do, to remind me he was bigger, younger, stronger. I didn't move. "Dad, please!" Beulah pushed past Shane, and suddenly tears streamed down her face. Real tears, maybe. Or maybe just practice from years of getting her way. "I'm your daughter. You really want me homeless? After everything we've done for you? We take care of you. You're adults with jobs." I kept my eyes on Shane, not Beulah. Watched his hands, watched his breathing. Figure it out. You don't have the guts to follow through with this. Shane stepped closer. "Some paper doesn't change anything. This house is ours. You know it. We know it. You won't actually kick us out. You don't have it in you, old man." I met his stare, said nothing. Let the silence do the work. They left eventually, took the papers with them. I heard them in the master bedroom, voices rising and falling, arguing about what to do next. I sat back down on the cot and waited. The Cold War started that afternoon. They stopped speaking to me directly, left the notes instead, scattered around the house where I'd find them. "Thanks for nothing. Family means nothing to you. You'll regret this?" Shane made phone calls loud enough for me to hear through the walls. "Nah, man, he's not going through with it. All talk. He filed some papers to scare us, but he won't finish it. He's weak." Beulah left dishes in the sink, let trash pile up, played music at midnight, small cruelties designed to crack my resolve. I documented everything, took photos of the damage they had accumulated, scratches on the hardwood floors, holes in the drywall, broken window blind in the guest room, downloaded my text messages from them into a file, started a journal, dated entries, factual observations. Shane home drunk, 2 a.m., broke glass in kitchen. Beulah invited 6 people over, party until 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Every morning I left before they woke. Every evening I returned after they had settled in. I ate in my truck sometimes, sitting in a grocery store parking lot, watching the sun set over the strip malls and chain restaurants that lined the streets. The house filled with tension like humidity before a storm, heavy, oppressive, waiting for something to break. But I wasn't breaking. I was counting days. 28 days after the sheriff's visit, I sat in the storage room checking my phone calendar. The court hearing was scheduled for Monday, August 10th, 2 days away. I opened the fireproof safe, pulled out my folder. The property deed sat on top, crisp and official, my name in black ink. Beneath it, the photos I'd taken, the journal with dated entries, the saved text messages, sheriff's proof of service for the eviction notice. I paged through methodically, made sure everything was in order. Each piece of evidence told the same story. This was my property. They refused to leave. I'd followed every legal step. Shane's voice echoed from the living room, loud and performative on his phone. "Nah, man, he's not going through with it. All talk. He doesn't have the spine. We're not going anywhere." I closed the folder, returned it to the safe, spun the combination lock. 2 days. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in the same khakis and button-down I'd worn to Alma's office, left the house at 7:30, drove through morning traffic into downtown Houston, found parking in the same garage on Travis. Harris County Justice Court occupied a utilitarian building that had seen thousands of cases just like mine. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Worn wooden benches lined the hallway outside the courtroom. People sat waiting, some with lawyers, some alone, all wearing expressions that ranged from bored to terrified. I checked in with the clerk, took a seat, opened my folder, and reviewed the documents one more time, even though I'd memorized every word. Around me, cases were called, evictions mostly, landlords versus tenants, property owners trying to reclaim what was legally theirs. Some defendants showed up and argued, some didn't appear at all. Patterson versus Hughes. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur. I stood, walked through the wooden gate to the front of the courtroom. The judge sat elevated behind his bench, gray-haired, wearing reading glasses that he peered over to look at me. "Mr. Patterson?" He glanced at the empty chairs where defendants should sit. "Where are Shane Hughes and Beulah Patterson Hughes?" "They chose not to appear, Your Honor." His eyebrows lifted slightly. That subtle expression said everything. That was a mistake on their part. "You are the plaintiff and property owner?" He held out his hand, and the bailiff took my documents, passed them up to the bench. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm listed as sole owner of the property. The defendants moved in 3 years ago on a temporary basis. No lease was ever signed. They were served by Harris County Sheriff on July 20th with proper 30-day notice." The judge flipped through the property deed, examined the sheriff's proof of service, looked at the photos I'd submitted showing the condition of the house. "The defendants didn't appear or file any response to the eviction notice?" "No, Your Honor." He made notes on a form, signed something, handed papers back to the bailiff. The whole process took less than 10 minutes. Based on the evidence presented and the defendant's failure to appear or contest, this is straightforward. Writ of possession granted, effective immediately, to be executed within 5 days. He stamped a document. Next case. The bailiff handed me the signed writ. I folded it carefully into my folder, turned, and walked out of the courtroom. On the courthouse steps, I stopped, pulled out the writ, and looked at it in the bright Texas sunlight. Official seal of Harris County. Judge's signature. My name, my address. Legal authority to reclaim my property. I drove from downtown to a locksmith shop in Spring Branch, a standalone building with a hand-painted sign that had been there since the 90s. Inside, an older man stood behind a counter covered with key blanks and lock mechanisms. Help you? I set the writ of possession on the counter. Court order eviction. I need all the locks changed on my house. Friday morning, if you can do it. He picked up the writ, scanned it, nodded. Smart to change them. I can come out Friday, swap everything. Front door, back door, garage, hour and a half, tops. You'll want deadbolts. Friday morning works. They usually leave around 9:30 for coffee. I met his eyes. Can you be there at 10? I want this done quickly once they're out of the house. Understanding crossed his face. He'd done this before. Knew how these situations played out. 10 o'clock. I'll bring everything needed. You just make sure they're gone when I get there. We shook hands. He wrote my address in his appointment book. Friday, August 15th, 10 a.m. I drove home as the afternoon heat built toward its peak. Pulled into the driveway beside Shane's truck. Music thumped through the walls. They were home, probably celebrating what they thought was my failure, my inability to follow through. I avoided the front door, walked around to the side entrance that opened directly into the storage room, closed myself inside, sat on the cot, took out the writ of possession, read it again, slower this time, absorbing every word. 5 days. The judge had given me 5 days to execute the order. I pulled out my phone and texted the locksmith. Confirm for Friday, 10 a.m. His response came back immediately. See you then. I set the phone down beside me on the cot. Through the thin walls, Shane laughed about something. Music shifted to a different song. Their party continued, oblivious. 4 more days of pretending to be defeated. 4 more days of living like a ghost in my own house. 4 more days of letting them think they'd won. Then Friday would come, and they'd learn exactly what happens when you push a man too far. The 4 days after court crawled by in a haze of heat and tension. Shane and Beulah celebrated what they thought was my surrender. Louder parties, more mess. Bolder insults shouted through walls. I maintained my routine, left before dawn, returned after dark, spoke to no one. They had no idea I held a writ of possession in my fireproof safe. Thursday evening arrived, August 14th. I sat in the storage room, door cracked open slightly, listening to them get ready. Let's go. It's wing night at Murphy's. Beulah's voice carried down the hallway. Shane's keys jingled. Finally, I need a drink after dealing with his nonsense. Their Thursday ritual, the bar on Mason Road. Every single week for as long as they'd lived here. Predictable as sunrise. I waited by the small window, watching through the gap in the curtain. Shane's truck backed out of the driveway, taillights glowing red in the dusk. The engine noise faded down the street, then disappeared completely. I checked my phone. 7:45. They'd be gone for hours. They always were. I moved through the house quickly, pulled out my phone and opened the camera, photographing the current state of things. Empty bottles on the coffee table, cigarette burns in the carpet, the broken window blind. Everything documented with timestamps. In the storage room, I confirmed all my important belongings were secured. Birth certificate, property deed, Lorraine's photo, the writ of possession, everything that mattered locked in the fireproof safe. I sent a text to the locksmith. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. confirmed. 3 locks, front door, back door, garage. I'll be ready. His response came immediately. See you then. Bringing high security deadbolts. I organized my documents in order, writ on top, then the property deed, then the sheriff's proof of service, then my journal of incidents. Everything I'd need if tomorrow went the way I expected it to go. The house felt different with them gone. Quieter, cleaner, somehow, even though nothing had changed physically. Just the absence of their presence made the air easier to breathe. At 10:30, I heard the truck return. The engine was loud. Shane had never fixed that broken muffler. I positioned myself in the entryway, the writ of possession in my hand, and waited. The front door opened. Beulah stumbled through first, laughing at something. Shane followed, steadying himself on the doorframe. Both of them reeked of beer and wing sauce. They stopped when they saw me standing there. The eviction became official at noon today. I held up the court order so they could see the judge's signature. This is the writ of possession from Harris County Justice Court. You need to take your belongings and leave the house tonight. Beulah stared at me for a long moment. Then she started laughing. Are you serious right now? She swayed slightly, still grinning. Dad, you've completely lost your mind. We're not going anywhere. This is ridiculous. Shane moved closer, got right in my space, close enough that I could smell the alcohol on his breath. Try to evict us, old man. His voice dropped low, threatening. You don't have the spine. That paper doesn't mean anything. We live here. This is our house now. I didn't step back, didn't flinch, just kept my eyes level with his. Then, understand this. Tomorrow morning, the locks will be changed. If you try to force your way in after that, it's breaking and entering. That's a criminal offense. The police will be involved. Shane's laugh was harsh. You're bluffing. You can't do this. I turned and walked down the hallway. Slow, deliberate, not running, not hiding. We'll break down whatever locks you put on. Shane's voice followed me. This isn't over. You hear me? This isn't over. I reached the storage room door, stepped inside, closed it behind me. The bolt lock I'd installed 2 weeks ago slid home with a solid click. Shane pounded on the door. The thin wood rattled but held. You think a lock stops me? I'll kick this door in. I sat on the cot and let his voice fade into background noise. Eventually, the pounding stopped. Footsteps retreated. Voices continued in the main house, angry, slurred, cycling between fury and confusion. Around midnight, the house finally went quiet. I lay back on the cot, still fully dressed. Checked my phone one more time. Set an alarm for 6 in the morning. Tomorrow, they'd have their morning routine. Sleep late, stumble to the kitchen for coffee, leave around 9:30 for their Friday ritual. Breakfast tacos and more coffee at the place on Highway 6. Like clockwork, I'd be ready. I plugged in my phone to charge, closed my eyes. Sleep wouldn't come easy. My mind kept running through scenarios, checking variables, planning for contingencies. But I didn't need sleep. I needed to be alert. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it. My alarm went off at 6. I hadn't really slept. Just laid there watching the darkness slowly lighten through the small window, listening to the house settle into silence after midnight. Around 8:30, I heard movement. Shower running, coffee maker gurgling through the walls. Their routine, unchanged by last night's confrontation. They still didn't believe me. At 9:15, I heard Shane's truck keys jingling, footsteps to the front door, the door closing, engine starting. I moved to the window and watched through the gap in the curtain. Shane's truck rolled down the driveway with both of them inside. Friday morning coffee run, like clockwork. The moment his truck turned the corner and disappeared from sight, I pulled out my phone and texted the locksmith. They just left. Come now. He responded in seconds. On my way. 10 minutes. I unlocked the storage room door and moved through the house to the front window. Positioned myself where I could see the driveway, the street, everything. 8 minutes later, a white van pulled up. The locksmith, same man from the shop, got out carrying a toolbox and a bag of new lock hardware. I opened the door before he could knock. Mr. Patterson. He nodded, all business. Let's get this done quick. He worked efficiently, started with the front door, removed the old deadbolt and handle set, installed new mechanisms with precision, heavy-duty locks, high-security pins, the kind that couldn't be picked easily, couldn't be forced without serious tools and time. I stood nearby, phone in hand, recording the installation. Documentation, evidence, everything would matter. Later. Back door next, he said, gathering his tools. I followed him through the house. He repeated the process. Old lock out, new lock in. Tested it multiple times to ensure smooth operation. Garage door? This way. The garage took slightly longer. The old lock had corroded from humidity and heat. He had to drill out part of the mechanism, but eventually the new deadbolt slid home perfectly. All done. He handed me 3 new keys on a ring. High-security deadbolts on all 3 entrances. You're the only one with access now. That'll be $350. I counted out the cash. He didn't ask questions. Just pocketed the money, packed his tools, and headed for his van. Good luck, he said over his shoulder. I watched him drive away, checked my phone, 10:10. I moved back to the living room, stood where I'd be visible through the front window, waited. At 10:40, Shane's truck appeared at the end of the street. I watched it approach, park in the driveway. Both doors opened. Shane and Beulah got out, carrying coffee cups and paper bags from whatever breakfast place they had hit. Beulah reached the front door first, dug her key from her purse, slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. She tried again, jiggled it, pulled it out and looked at it, confused. Then understanding crossed her face. "Dad!" She pounded on the door with her fist. "Open this door! This isn't funny!" I stood in the living room, 10 feet away, visible through the window. Made eye contact with her, didn't move. "Our things are in there. You can't do this." Shane appeared beside her, tried his own key, same result. He stepped back, stared at the door, then at me through the window. His face went red. He pulled out his phone. I watched mine light up with his call. Let it ring. Didn't answer. The voicemail he left came through a moment later. I played it on speaker, standing there watching him through the glass. "Pick up the phone. You changed the locks. Our stuff is in there. You open this door right now, or I'm breaking it down." Beulah's pounding intensified. "You can't evict us. Our belongings are inside. This is illegal. Open the door, you coward." Neighbors were starting to notice. Mrs. Chen from across the street stood on her porch watching. The couple 3 houses down slowed their morning walk to stare. Shane moved around the side of the house. I tracked his movement through different windows. Watched him try the back door. Then head to the garage. Then check windows. Everything locked. Everything secured. He came back to the front, breathing hard, face slick with sweat in the climbing heat. "He thinks he's won?" Shane's voice carried through the door. "I'm getting my tools. I'm breaking this door down. He's not keeping me out of my house." Beulah grabbed his arm. "Shane, our stuff is in there. He can't just lock us out." They stood in the driveway arguing, Shane gesturing wildly. Beulah crying now, mascara running in the humidity. Then Shane stopped circling. Just stood there, hands on his hips, staring at the house. At me through the window. Beulah returned to the front door. Pounded again, but weaker now. Her voice had gone hoarse from screaming. Shane pulled out his phone, made a call. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw his gestures. Angry, emphatic, pointing at the house. The call ended. He said something to Beulah. She nodded. They both got in the truck. Engine started. They drove away. But I knew this wasn't retreat. Shane's face when he pulled away. That was determination, not defeat. He was going to get something. Tools. Whatever he needed to break down these doors. I pulled out my own phone, opened it to 911, finger hovering over the call button. Not yet. I needed Shane to actually commit the crime, needed witnesses, needed the breaking and entering to be undeniable. So, I waited. They returned just after 11. I'd been standing at the living room window, phone in hand, documents spread on the coffee table beside me. Shane's truck pulled into the driveway fast, tires spitting gravel. Something metallic gleamed in the truck bed. Shane climbed out, walked around back, and lifted it. A crowbar, professional grade, heavy steel, the kind mechanics use to pry apart engine blocks. 3 feet long. He carried it like a baseball bat. Beulah had stayed near the front door the entire time he'd been gone. When she saw him coming with that bar, her face transformed. Not fear, triumph. This was exactly what I'd been waiting for. "I'll show him who's in charge here." Shane's voice carried across the yard, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, loud enough for anyone listening. "This is our house. No lock is keeping me out. Watch this." "Do it!" Beulah's voice went shrill with excitement. "Break it down. He can't keep us out. This is our home." I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, kept my eyes on Shane as he positioned himself at the door. 911, what's your emergency? My son-in-law is breaking down my front door with a crowbar. My voice came out level, factual. I have a court eviction order. He was legally removed today. He's using a metal pry bar. Address is 1215 Meadowbrook Lane, Katy. This is Harris County. Officers are 8 to 10 minutes away, sir. Are you in immediate danger? Is anyone injured? I'm safe inside. The door is locked. He's attempting to force entry. I watch Shane wind up for his first strike. But tell the officers to approach quietly from the backyard. The back gate is open. If he sees patrol cars, he'll flee before they can arrest him. I'll relay that to the responding units. Stay on the line, sir. I will. Shane raised the crowbar high, brought it down. The impact shook the house. metal on wood, the crash echoing down the street. The door frame shuddered but held. He pulled back for another strike. I moved through the house quickly, phone still to my ear. Checked the back door, unlocked from the inside. Back gate, already unlatched, spotted that earlier when I'd walked the perimeter. Grabbed my backup phone from the bedroom, started recording video of the front door. Returned to the living room. Set up the recording phone on the mantel, angled toward the entrance. Spread my documents on the coffee table. Writ of possession on top, clearly visible. Another massive impact rattled through the walls. "Sir, officers are approximately 6 minutes out," the dispatcher said. "Is he still attempting entry?" "Yes, he's making progress. The frame is starting to split." Through the window, I could see Mrs. Chen on her porch across the street, phone in her hand. The couple from 3 houses down had stopped their walk to watch. A teenager on a bicycle had pulled over, staring. Witnesses? Multiple witnesses. Shane swung again. The wood around the lock splintered, cracks spiderwebbed through the frame. 4 minutes, the dispatcher updated. Beulah was jumping now, clapping her hands together like she was at a sporting event. "Yes, almost there. One more. Break it." Shane's face had gone red with effort and rage. Sweat poured down his temples. He raised the crowbar for another strike, muscles straining. The door frame was failing. Another 2 or 3 hits would do it. I positioned myself in the center of the living room, standing, not sitting, ready. Another strike. The wood around the deadbolt began to separate from the frame, then I heard it. Underneath Beulah's shouting, underneath the ringing in my ears from the impacts. Car doors, closing quietly. From behind the house, I checked my phone. 4 minutes since the call. They were here. The police moved through my backyard like they'd done this 1,000 times. I heard the gate creak, footsteps on the patio. A soft knock at the back door, professional, controlled. I opened it. 2 Houston PD officers stood there, hands near their service weapons, eyes scanning past me into the house. The name tag on the first one read, Martinez. The second, Chen. Shane's crowbar hit the front door again. The whole house shook. Officer Martinez nodded to me, put her finger to her lips, gestured for me to step aside. They moved into the living room, positioning themselves with clear views of the entrance. I handed Martinez the writ of possession. She glanced at it, nodded once, then fixed her eyes on the front door. Another impact. Louder this time. The frame was giving way. Chen moved to the other side of the room. Both officers' hands rested near their holsters, ready but not drawn, waiting. I stayed in the center, holding my phone with the recording still running. The documents lay spread on the coffee table between us and the door. Another strike. The lock mechanism tore partly free from the splintered wood. "Almost!" Beulah's voice outside, excited beyond reason. "One more," Shane wound up, brought the crowbar down with everything he had. The frame split completely. The door swung partly open, hanging crooked on damaged hinges. Shane kicked it the rest of the way. It slammed against the wall. He stepped through, crowbar still gripped in both hands, face flushed with victory. "I told you no lock would keep me out. This is—" He stopped, saw me standing there. Then his eyes moved left, right, saw the officers. Every bit of color drained from his face. Beulah pushed past him, still riding her wave of triumph. "See? We're back, and you can't—" She stopped too. "Houston police!" Martinez's voice cut through the room like a blade. Her hand moved to her weapon. "Drop the crowbar. Drop it now." Shane stood frozen. The metal bar hung from his hands. His mouth opened. No sound came out. "Hands where I can see them." Chen stepped forward, hand also on her holster. "Wait, what?" Beulah's voice had changed completely. High, panicked. "Police? What are they doing here? This is our house. Tell them, Shane." "I said drop the weapon." Martinez's command voice filled the room. For one frozen second, Shane's hands tightened on the crowbar. I watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. Fight? Run? Use it? Chen's hand moved to her weapon, drew it halfway. That tiny motion broke whatever desperate thought was forming in Shane's mind. The crowbar clattered to my floor, heavy metal on hardwood. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. Shane raised his hands slowly. His face had gone white, mouth opening and closing, but producing no words. "This is a misunderstanding." Beulah was backing up, hands out, gesturing wildly. "This is my father's house. We live here. Ma'am, step to the side." Chen moved toward her, one hand still on her weapon. "Over there, against the wall." Martinez approached Shane, pulling handcuffs from her belt. "Sir, turn around, hands behind your back." Shane turned mechanically. His eyes found mine, held them. Looking for what? Mercy? Intervention? I stood there and watched. Martinez pulled his hands down, one at a time. The handcuffs clicked into place, metal on wrists. That sound, those clicks, echoed through the entire house. Through 3 years of displacement and disrespect and slowly shrinking into a storage room. Through every party I'd cleaned up, every insult I'd swallowed, every night I'd laid awake wondering if my own daughter would ever see me as anything more than an obstacle. Those clicks were the sweetest sound I'd heard in 3 years. "You have the right to remain silent," Martinez began. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Beulah started crying, real tears this time. "Dad, please, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them we live here." I looked at her. My daughter, 38 years old, standing in my living room with mascara running down her face, surrounded by the wreckage of the door her husband had just destroyed with a crowbar. "You were evicted," I said. My voice was steady. "You were given 30 days' notice. The court ruled 3 days ago. The locks were changed this morning. You have no legal right to be here. But our things can be collected with a police escort at a scheduled time. That's standard procedure." I looked at Martinez. "Isn't that correct, officer?" "That's correct." She finished reading Shane his rights. "There are legal processes for collecting personal belongings after eviction. Breaking down the door is not one of them." Chen had Beulah against the wall now, checking for weapons, asking for identification. Martinez guided Shane toward the broken front door, toward the neighbors still watching, toward the patrol car that had pulled up silently in the street while Shane had been focused on his attack. As they passed me, Shane spoke. His voice was barely a whisper. "You planned this." I met his eyes, said nothing. Let the silence answer for me. Martinez walked him outside into the bright Texas sunlight. The handcuffs glinted. Neighbors had their phones out, recording. Mrs. Chen, the couple, the teenager on the bicycle, everyone watching as Shane was led to the patrol car. Beulah followed a moment later with Officer Chen, not handcuffed, but clearly not free to leave either. I stood in my living room, in my house, and watched them go. Officer Martinez read Shane his rights. The words were familiar from 1,000 crime shows, but hearing them in my living room, directed at my son-in-law standing in my broken doorway, made them real in a way television never could. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you." Shane's face had gone from red rage to white shock in seconds. The crowbar lay between us on the floor, evidence, weapon, symbol of how far he'd been willing to go. His hands were still cuffed behind his back, and he swayed slightly as if the reality was physically unbalancing him. "What do you mean arrested?" Beulah's voice climbed higher, cracking on the last word. "This is my father's house. We live here. Tell them, Dad. Tell them this is a mistake. Tell them we belong here." I pulled the folder from the coffee table, the one I'd been preparing for weeks, handed it to Martinez without a word. She flipped through slowly, methodically. Property deed with my name alone on the title. Writ of possession signed by the Harris County judge. Sheriff's proof of service showing they'd been legally notified. Photos of the damage they had caused, the cigarette burns, the broken fixtures, the holes in walls. My journal with dated entries documenting parties, threats, escalating aggression. Screenshots of text messages where Shane had threatened me explicitly. Martinez's expression didn't change, but I saw the slight nod. The recognition of a well-documented case. "Chen, photograph everything," she said to her partner. Officer Chen moved through the room with professional efficiency. Camera flash illuminating the broken door frame, showing where the wood had splintered under repeated blows. The crowbar, still lying exactly where Shane had dropped it. The forced entry point with metal scratches from the pry bar. The damaged lock mechanism hanging loose. Each click of the camera shutter documenting the crime scene, making it official, permanent. "Mr. Patterson, this is straightforward." Martinez looked up from my documents, met my eyes. breaking into an occupied dwelling with a weapon, criminal property damage, assault with a deadly weapon. These are serious felony charges. She turned to Shane, her voice shifting to official formality. Sir, you're being arrested for burglary of a habitation. That's a second-degree felony in Texas, criminal mischief causing approximately $850 in damages, and assault with a deadly weapon. Under Texas Penal Code, that crowbar qualifies as a deadly weapon when used to force entry with intent to threaten or harm. Shane's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out, just a strangled sound. This is insane. His voice finally found itself, though it came out hoarse. This is my house. We live here. He's just being vindictive. This is family business. Martinez's expression remained neutral, professional. Sir, the legal documentation shows otherwise. The property deed lists Mr. Patterson as sole owner. The eviction was court-ordered and legally executed. You have no legal right to be here. Watch your head. She placed her hand on top of Shane's head, guiding him through the doorway he'd just destroyed. Beulah grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. Dad, please, stop this. He's my husband. He's family. This is just a family argument that got out of hand. You can't do this to us. I looked at her hand on my arm, looked at her face, makeup streaked with tears, eyes wide with desperation. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to hold my hand crossing the street. Then, I saw the woman who'd watched her husband break down my door and cheered him on. I didn't pull away, just stood there until she let go herself. He arrested himself when he chose to break down my door with a crowbar. My voice was steady, final, the voice I'd used as captain when a decision was made and wouldn't be reconsidered. This stopped being a family matter when he committed a crime, when he destroyed property, when he threatened my safety. Take your things and leave, Beulah. Ma'am. Officer Chen stepped toward Beulah, her stance professional but firm. You received legal eviction notice 30 days ago. You attended no court hearing. You have no lease, no rental agreement, no legal standing. This is no longer your residence. You're currently trespassing on private property. But our belongings, everything we own is in there. You have 2 hours to collect your personal items under my supervision, Chen said. Only personal belongings, clothing, toiletries, personal effects. Nothing that belongs to Mr. Patterson. Then you must leave permanently and provide an address where remaining items can be delivered. If you refuse, you'll be arrested for criminal trespass. Beulah's face crumpled. Real tears now, not the manipulative ones I'd seen so many times before. The reality was finally breaking through the denial, crashing through the entitlement. Outside, neighbors lined the street. Mrs. Chen stood on her porch with her hand over her mouth. The couple from 3 houses down had stopped their walk, watching openly. The teenager on his bicycle had his phone out, recording. Others peered from windows, curtains pulled aside, all watching as Shane was walked to the patrol car in handcuffs, his work shirt torn at the shoulder, face slick with sweat, hands cuffed behind his back. Some neighbors had their phones out, recording, capturing this moment, making it public, permanent, undeniable. Shane looked back at the house as Martinez opened the patrol car door. His eyes found mine through the window. In that look, I saw rage, disbelief, the desperate hope that somehow this would be reversed. Beulah! His voice carried across the yard, louder now, almost frantic. Call my brother! Get me out of here! This is crazy! He can't do this to us! This is our house! Still claiming ownership, still casting himself as the victim, still refusing to see that he'd brought this entirely on himself. Martinez's hand on his head guided him into the back seat. The door closed with a solid thunk that echoed in the midday heat. I walked through my house with Martinez while Chen stayed in the living room with Beulah. We moved from room to room, documenting everything they'd left behind. Scratches on the walls where furniture had been shoved carelessly. Broken cabinet hinge in the kitchen, hanging loose. Cigarette burns in the carpet. Multiple spots, never repaired. Hole in the drywall near the guest bedroom where Shane had punched through in some fit of rage. Water stains on the ceiling where they'd let a leak go unattended. You'll want copies of all this for your insurance claim and for court, Martinez said, photographing each instance of damage. The district attorney will contact you within a week about the case. With this level of evidence and documentation, it's extremely strong, clean prosecution. How long will he be held? Bail hearing in 2 or 3 days. Given the felony charges and the weapon involved, I'd estimate bail at $15,000, maybe $20,000. She glanced back toward the living room where Beulah's sobs were audible. Can she make that? I doubt it. I thought about their financial situation, the reason they'd moved in originally. They don't have savings. His family isn't well off either. Martinez nodded, unsurprised. She'd seen this pattern before. Then he'll sit in Harris County Jail until trial or plea deal. Could be weeks, could be months, depending on court schedules and whether he accepts a plea. She handed me her card, official Houston Police Department logo embossed on thick paper. Keep all your documentation organized. Take photos of anything else you find. The protective order request should go through. That's standard procedure in cases like this. He won't be allowed within 500 feet of you or your property. If he violates it, he goes straight to jail, no bail. Thank you, officer. You did everything right, Mr. Patterson. You followed the legal process. You documented everything. You didn't try to handle this yourself. She looked at me directly. That matters. That's what makes this case work. She walked to her car, radio on her shoulder crackling with other calls, other emergencies across the city. I stood in my doorway, finally mine again, watching Beulah work frantically to pack belongings into garbage bags, the same black plastic bags they'd stuffed my things into weeks ago. She moved through the rooms like a tornado, grabbing clothes, toiletries, shoes, throwing everything into bags without care or organization. She wouldn't look at me. Couldn't look at me? Whether from shame or rage, I couldn't tell. Didn't need to know. Officer Chen stood nearby, checking her watch periodically, ensuring Beulah didn't take anything that wasn't hers, maintaining the professional distance required. Hour and 45 minutes left, ma'am. I suggest you focus on essentials. Remaining items can be picked up later with proper coordination. I closed the door slowly. Let her finish without an audience, without my presence judging or watching or validating. Through the window, I watched the patrol car pull away with Shane in the back seat. Head down, hands cuffed behind him. The car turned the corner, and he was gone. The same garbage bags that had held my belongings now held theirs. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. The days after Shane's arrest moved quickly, each one bringing small victories of restoration. A contractor arrived Monday morning, with wood samples and hardware catalogs. We stood in my entryway examining the destroyed frame, discussing options. I chose the reinforced steel frame, the commercial-grade deadbolt with anti-drill plates, a solid core door that would take a battering ram to breach. The installer looked at the crowbar damage and nodded approvingly at my choices. "This'll hold," he said. "Whatever happened here won't happen again." The work took 2 days. I watched them remove every splinter of the old frame, every piece of damaged wood, install the new materials with precision, test the locks multiple times, hand me 3 keys on a new ring. The day after the door was finished, a security company van pulled up. 2 technicians spent 6 hours installing cameras covering every entrance and blind spot, motion sensors on the windows, glass break detectors, a monitored alarm system with a control panel in my bedroom and another by the front door. They showed me the phone app that let me watch live feeds from anywhere. "You'll get instant alerts if anything triggers," the lead technician explained. "Police dispatch is notified automatically if the alarm goes off and you don't cancel within 60 seconds. Average response time in this area is about 8 minutes. I thanked them and activated the system the moment they left. No one would catch me unprepared again. Not family, not strangers, not anyone. Alma called on Wednesday, 3 days after the arrest. "Shane's been formally charged," she said, her voice carrying that matter-of-fact tone attorneys use when delivering significant news. "Burglary of a habitation, that's a second-degree felony. Criminal mischief over $750. Assault with a deadly weapon. The prosecutor is taking this seriously, Lonnie." "What does that mean for bail?" "It was set at $15,000 at his hearing yesterday. He'd need to post $1,500 cash to a bondsman to get out." She paused, and I heard papers rustling. "He's still in Harris County Jail. Beulah tried to raise it, called his brother, his friends, anyone she could think of. No one came through." I sat at my kitchen table, processing this. Shane in jail, unable to leave, facing the consequences in a concrete cell instead of my master bedroom. How long will he stay there? Until trial or until he accepts a plea deal? The prosecutor's office contacted me yesterday. They want this resolved quickly. They're offering a deal. plead guilty to reduced charges, 3 years supervised probation, mandatory anger management counseling, and a 500-foot protective order. The alternative is jury trial with potential 2 to 10-year prison sentence for the burglary conviction alone. What do you think he'll do? Take the deal, Alma said without hesitation. His public defender will advise him that going to trial is too risky. The evidence is overwhelming. Video footage you recorded, police testimony, documented damage, multiple witnesses. No jury in Harris County will side with him. My guess? He signs the plea agreement within 2 weeks, and the protective order. It'll be part of the probation terms. He can't come within 500 feet of you or your property. Can't contact you directly or indirectly. If he violates it even once, he goes straight back to jail, and the original felony charges get reinstated. He'll serve the full sentence. Thank you, Alma, for everything you've done. You did the hard part, Lonnie. You stood your ground when most people would have given up. That week, I reclaimed my house room by room, started with the master bedroom, stripped the bed they'd used, every sheet and pillowcase, took the mattress and box spring to the dump. I couldn't sleep on something they'd occupied for 3 years. Bought a new set, new pillows, new comforter in deep blue instead of the beige they'd chosen. I went through the closet systematically, found clothes they'd left behind, Shane's work shirts, Beulah's dresses, bagged everything and dropped it at Goodwill. Let someone else deal with their remnants. Scrubbed the bathroom until the grout was white again. Replaced the shower curtain, the bath mat, the towels. Hung my own toiletries on the hooks, my razor, my soap, my space. Moved to the kitchen next. Found their dishes mixed with mine, their cheap pots and pans crowding my cabinets. Separated everything, kept what was mine, donated what was theirs. Reorganized the shelves the way I wanted them. The living room took longest. They'd rearranged furniture, pushed my reading chair into a corner, dominated the space with their oversized couch and massive television. I hired 2 college students for $50 to help me move everything back. My chair returned to its spot by the window, my bookshelf against the wall where it belonged. Their furniture went to the curb with a free sign, gone within 3 hours. I repainted the walls where there were scuffs and scratches, patched the holes, replaced broken light fixtures, fixed the cabinet hinge, shampooed the carpets myself, running the machine over the cigarette burns until they were barely visible. Each repair was methodical, deliberate, erasing their presence, restoring order. On the 10th day, my phone buzzed with a text message. Dad, I'm sorry about everything. I know things got out of hand. Can we talk? Can I come home? I miss you. I stared at the screen, read it 3 times, analyzed the language. Things got out of hand. Passive voice, no ownership. Not, I'm sorry we abused your hospitality. Not, I'm sorry we destroyed your peace. Just vague acknowledgement that something unspecified happened. Can I come home? Still calling it home. Still believing she had a right to return. I could see the pattern clearly now. The manipulation, the rewriting of history, the assumption that family meant unconditional acceptance regardless of behavior. I typed my response with steady fingers. No. Find your own path. Read it once. Sent it. Deleted the entire thread. Blocked her number. Some bridges need to burn completely. Alma called again on August 28th, 2 weeks after the arrest. It's done, she said. Shane signed the plea agreement this morning. Guilty to amended charges. Burglary reduced to criminal trespass, which is still a felony, but carries lighter sentencing. Criminal mischief stands. Assault charge dropped in exchange for the guilty plea. 3 years supervised probation with standard conditions. Monthly check-ins. Anger management classes. No contact with you. Protective order in place. When is he released? Today, this afternoon. But Lonnie, he can't come near you. The protective order is ironclad. 500 feet minimum distance. If he shows up at your house, drives past your street, tries to contact you in any way, he goes back to jail immediately and faces the original charges. His probation officer made that crystal clear. What about Beulah? She's not named in the protective order, but she knows better than to show up. She'd be trespassing the moment she sets foot on your property. I've sent her a formal letter explaining that any attempt to enter your home will result in immediate arrest. I thanked Alma and sat in my newly reclaimed kitchen, processing the news. Shane was free but constrained. Beulah was displaced. And I was finally, legally, permanently protected. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and temperatures already climbing toward 90 degrees by 8 a.m. I sat at my kitchen table, in my house, in my space, with coffee steaming in front of me. The silence was profound in a way I'd forgotten silence could be. No music pounding through walls at dawn. No voices raised in argument over nothing. No footsteps that didn't belong. No tension crackling in the air like static electricity before a storm. Just the quiet hum of the air conditioning, keeping the heat at bay. The tick of the clock Lorraine had bought at an estate sale 20 years ago. The distant sound of a neighbor mowing their lawn. Ordinary sounds, beautiful in their normalcy. My phone buzzed against the table. Text from Mike Johnson, my old colleague from Station 28. Lonnie, heard what happened with your daughter and her husband. Takes guts to stand up like that, especially to family. Barbecue at my place this afternoon around 3 if you're free. Nothing fancy, just burgers and catching up. Be good to see you, brother. Word traveled fast in the fire department community, even among retirees. But Mike's message wasn't gossip or pity. I could hear his voice in the words, respect, solidarity, invitation back into normal life. The kind of relationship where 3 years could pass and you picked up right where you left off. I typed my response. I'll be there. Thanks, Mike. Need me to bring anything? His reply came immediately. Just yourself. See you at 3. I set the phone down and looked around my kitchen. New locks gleaming on the door. Security camera app showing peaceful views of my property. Coffee cup in my hand. Sunlight streaming through clean windows. 2 hours until the barbecue. Time for a second cup of coffee. Time to read the newspaper without interruption. Time to just sit in the peace I'd fought for. Piece by piece. Document by document. Strategic decision by strategic decision. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at my property. The grass needed mowing. I'd handle that tomorrow. The hedges could use trimming next week. The fence in back had a board that needed replacing. Small projects, normal maintenance. The kind of ordinary problems that didn't involve lawyers or police or court hearings or family betrayal. Just life. Regular life. Mine to live however I chose. The coffee was strong and hot, exactly how I liked it. The air conditioning maintained a comfortable 72 degrees. The house was quiet in the way houses should be. Lived in, peaceful, secure. I thought about the journey that had led here. The moment I'd decided to stop waiting for change and start creating it. The attorney consultation, the court filing, the patient documentation, the strategic waiting, the 911 call, the click of handcuffs, each step building on the last, each decision moving me closer to this moment. Standing in my kitchen on a Saturday morning, with nothing more pressing than deciding whether to have a second cup of coffee. For the first time in 3 years, I was home. Really, truly home. I raised my coffee cup in a silent toast to Lorraine's photo on the mantle in the living room. She would have approved. She'd always been the one who reminded me that kindness without boundaries becomes doormat, and family doesn't mean accepting abuse. I set down the cup and smiled. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.